ultimately, if you want to change the world, you have to change the young. And if you want to change the young, you have to get them young. Because so much of what determines whether we'll be afraid or risk-taking, whether we'll be confident or afraid, whether we'll have a respect for reason or be second-handed social metaphysicians, that is, view society as determining the truth rather than their own mind, whether we respect reason or mysticism, whether we respect reason or just follow the leader. So much of that is determined in our school years. So much of that is determined when we're young. So much of that is determined in our schools. Our schools, they don't teach us content, and the content they do teach, when they teach content, is often wrong. Whether it's on about American history, or it's about history generally, whether it's about what shapes history, what determines history, which is so crucial, because if you don't know the past, there's no way to understand the present or understand the future. Or whether the way our schools shape, so we need schools that actually taught content that was true. We'd have to have schools that taught science and math. Just like I said, the Enlightenment could not happen without a scientific revolution. You cannot have an objectivist revolution without a respect for science. And a respect for science has to come from school, from education. And that respect for science should breed, not necessarily everybody becomes a scientist or everyone understands science, but it breeds a respect for reason. It breeds a respect for the truth of knowing reality. So science education has to be reformed completely to emphasize the role of reason in understanding the world out there, in understanding the material world. History would have to be reformed completely to understand the causal relationship between events, and again show that ideas, reason, thinking matter. History is not some dialectic, some predetermined dialectic that is shaped by external mystical forces, whether you're an atheist or a religionist. You'd have to have an educational system that encouraged people to push themselves, kids to push themselves, to challenge themselves, to constantly get better. Not to sit around emoting, not to sit around spouting nonsense, but to actually think and constantly improve and constantly challenge themselves. It would have to be an educational system that was ready to fail kids, because the only way to gain self-esteem is to be graded. Not on some curve, but to be graded based on knowledge, based on reality. So it would have to be an educational system that challenged kids, that pushed them. And yet one that encouraged their individuality, that encouraged them to think for themselves, that encouraged them to use their mind to come up with ideas, with ways of doing things. That may be original for the kids, but then was willing to say, no, that's nonsense because it doesn't lead to the right answer. So it has to be both disciplined and with the ability to allow for individuality, if you will. I mean, Montessori method is the ideal for young kids, where they both get, in a sense, rigorous training about reality, but done in a way that leaves them free to take risks, to navigate the world around them, to explore. So we have a Montessori education that's a great foundation, but then you need to build on it. We need a K through 12 educational system that is built in the foundations of the Montessori method, that expands on it, deepens it, and encourages people, kids again, to have true self-esteem, true self-confidence, earned self-confidence. Respect for the mind, respect for reason, respect for fact. And, importantly, which kids have no concept of today, respect for knowledge. I mean, God, the number of people I see out there spouting completely ignorant views, ignorant ideas, ignorant data. Just data that's wrong. But doing so with confidence, with this false, I got a ribbon self-esteem. Because somebody told them they were geniuses when they were young, and now they think they can just say anything. And they can be in their early 20s and think they know everything about the world. Because they read a book. Because they got a ribbon. Because somebody admires them. Because they got feedback from some fans on YouTube or whatever. So respect for knowledge. Respect for knowledge. Which is rare in the world in which we live in today, where young people think they know everything because they've got Google. It means a world in which people have their attention span to listen to an actual argument. To listen to an actual argument, think about it. Not just emote about it, but think about it, consider it, mull it over, and then respond with an argument, with an actual argument. We live in a world with attention plans of maximum 3 minutes to fit the latest hip-hop or whatever song that exists, right, that is out there on the radio. Can't think in more than 3-minute bites. 3 minutes, I guess, is a lot these days on Twitter, on YouTube, on Snapchat, or whatever. 3 minutes is a long attention span. You need an attention span. You need to be able to read. You need to be able to think. You need to be able to consider. You need to be able to make an argument. So again, this goes back to thinking, training kids in thinking, in using their mind.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute. That man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it. And that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith?
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason. A morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right. All right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute. By which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people, nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I interrupt now?
You may.
Because you put this philosophy to work in your novel Atlas Shrugged.
That's right.
You demonstrate it in human terms in your novel Atlas Shrugged. And let me start by quoting from a review of this novel Atlas Shrugged that appeared in Newsweek. It said that you are out to destroy almost every edifice in the contemporary American way of life, our Judeo-Christian religion, our modified government-regulated capitalism, our rule by the majority will. Other reviews have said that you scorn churches and the concept of God. Are these accurate criticisms?
Yes. I agree with the facts, but not the estimate of this criticism. Namely, if I am challenging the base of all these institutions, I'm challenging the moral code of altruism, the precept that man's moral duty is to live for others, that man must sacrifice himself to others, which is the present-day morality.
What do you mean by sacrifice himself for others? Now we're getting to the point.
One moment. Since I'm challenging the base, I necessarily would challenge the institutions you named, which are a result of that morality.
All right.
And now what is self-sacrifice?
Yes, what is self-sacrifice? You say that you do not like the altruism by which we live. You like a certain kind of Ayn Randist selfishness.
I would say that I don't like is too weak a word. I consider it evil. And self-sacrifice is the precept that man needs to serve others in order to justify his existence, that his moral duty is to serve others. That is what most people believe today.
Well, yes, we're taught to feel concerned for our fellow man, to feel responsible for his welfare, to feel that we are, as religious people might put it, children under God and responsible one for the other. Now, why do you rebel? What's wrong with this philosophy?
But that is what, in fact, makes man a sacrificial animal. That man must work for others, concern himself with others, or be responsible for them. That is the role of a sacrificial object. I say that man is entitled to his own happiness and that he must achieve it himself, but that he cannot demand that others give up their lives to make him happy. And nor should he wish to sacrifice himself for the happiness of others. I hold that man should have self-esteem.
And cannot man have self-esteem if he loves his fellow man? What's wrong with loving your fellow man? Christ, every important moral leader in man's history, has taught us that we should love one another. Why, then, is this kind of love, in your mind, immoral?
It is immoral if it is a love placed above oneself. It is more than immoral, it's impossible. Because when you are asked to love everybody indiscriminately, that is, to love people without any standard, to love them regardless of the fact of whether they have any value or virtue, you are asked to love nobody.
But in a sense, in your book, you talk about love as if it were a business deal of some kind. Isn't the essence of love that it is above self-interest?
Well, let me make it concrete for you. What would it mean to have love above self-interest? It would mean, for instance, that a husband would tell his wife, if he were moral, according to the conventional morality, that I am marrying you just for your own sake. I have no personal interest in it, but I am so unselfish that I am marrying you only for your own good.
Well, should husbands and wives
would
tally
any
up?
woman like that?
Should husbands and wives tally up at the end of the day and say, well, now, wait a minute. I love her if she's done enough for me today, or she loves me if I have properly performed my functions?
No, you misunderstood me. That is not how love should be treated. I agree with you that it should be treated like a business deal, but every business has to have its own terms and its own kind of currency. And in love, the currency is virtue. You love people not for what you do for them or what they do for you. You love them for the values, the virtues which they have achieved in their own character. You don't love causelessly. You don't love everybody indiscriminately. You love only those who deserve it.
Using the super chat, and I noticed yesterday when I appealed for support for the show, many of you stepped forward and actually supported the show for the first time. So I'll do it again. Maybe we'll get some more today. If you like what you're hearing, if you appreciate what I'm doing, then I appreciate your support. Those of you who don't yet support the show, please take this opportunity. Go to yaronbrookshow.com/support or go to subscribestar.com, Yaron Brook Show, and make a kind of a monthly contribution to keep this going. I'm not sure when the next